Hello, and welcome to another episode of Military Transition Wellness, the podcast dedicated exclusively to those transitioning from military service. I'm your host, Michelle Seidling, and today we are talking about recovering from mental illness, doing so with fitness, with nutrition, with holistic things that you can focus on to really bring back your mental health. And here to help us do that is Kevin Kearns. Welcome to the podcast, Kevin. This podcast is available on multiple platforms, including YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and others. Please be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform to be informed as new episodes become available. If you enjoyed today's episode or any of our episodes, please rate and review the podcast on your favorite platform. As always, check out our website at foodexperienceunplugged.com for some resources as you begin your health journey.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you for all the listeners. And again, thank you for all our people, men and women that have served in the military, veterans, and are still serving today, because if we don't have them, we're in big trouble. So I guess we'll jump into this. So the reason we're reaching out to the military or focusing on the military and law enforcement myself is my new book is Light in the Tunnel, How to Survive and Thrive with Depression, on Amazon and on Audible. Is a true story how in 2019, after a very messy and bloody divorce, to the point where, let's put it this way, it's going to sound like a dateline, somebody attacked my gas meter in my house.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And that somebody was the ex. And we can't prove that, but it is a fact. So you want to talk about PTSD, and then that was early on in the divorce, and it got very messy, very bloody, and very costly, and to the point where you get overwhelmed. And similar to the military, you have that transition where you're going, okay, I was married, here you are in 3,300 square feet in your dream house, and then everything's gone, and now you're in an 1,100 square foot box in an apartment, and you're seeing your kids every other weekend. It's kind of like, now what? So I can only imagine. I mean, I think I only have one regret my entire life is not serving, because everybody was like, people have said that I've worked with the military, as like we were discussing earlier. I've been working with the military ever since I got involved with the UFC and trained 15 UFC fighters. People like Kenny Florian, Marcus Davis, Kurt Pellegrino. And when I put out DVDs and I wrote articles, the military reached out to me, and the law enforcement reached out to me. And we always, especially back in the mid 2000s when Afghanistan and Iraq was going on, we did anything we could for the military, and still do to this day. I'm in Rhode Island now. A few years ago, I've worked with the Rhode Island National Guard and General Callahan. And anytime law enforcement pops up, anything and everything that we can do for military, we do. So I think the transition for them coming home is quite challenging. I think everybody after age probably 25 has some type of trauma. There's some type of trauma in your life. And when you look at military, when you really think about it, their PTSD is off the chart. And law enforcement, look at right now, people dropping like flies. And now with the law enforcement, they have to have a camera built on their chest so they don't get in trouble. And the military, it's kind of similar. I mean, you've got to train people to go into an area that, and hopefully, in a combative situation, it's very difficult. You're taught to kill people, and then you have to come back and go, okay, now you can go back and working as an accountant. How does that work? How does that work? Wait a minute, I was just like driving a tank, and now I'm an accountant again. I don't know. It's very difficult, I think. So I think one of the best ways that we found between our lectures and our workshops is one of the things that we push on everybody is our 3 pillars. And our 3 pillars are proper exercise, proper nutrition, and proper mindset programming. That's a very big thing, because you really have to think about what you're doing and really program, get that out of your head. And the big thing I tell people too, I go, look, I'm a mental health advocate. I'm not a therapist. Get a therapist, get whoever you need, whatever it is. I will help you with those other things, but you need to talk to a professional. You definitely need to talk to a professional. When I became transparent in 2020 about what I went through, we posted a video. My business coach asked me to post a video on Facebook, because I hadn't been on Facebook for a while. And he said, talk about something difficult. I talk about the depression, and we got 2,000 views in a day. To date, and I'm not trying to be egotistical, before the book came out, I've saved 21 people from committing suicide. Some I didn't know, some I knew.
Wow.
People just reached out to me and like, I need help, coach. I'm like, okay, can you talk to my son? I'm like, I'll talk to anybody.
Prior to your experience in 2019, did you focus on mental health with regard to the fitness and nutrition and so forth?
We did in the sense of mindset programming, but I didn't, my first book, Always Pick Last, is a true story of how I grew up. I was a kid that stunk at every sport, last to take his training wheels off his bike and last to tie his shoes. And it was quite challenging to do all that. And then I had a life-changing event. This wedding ring on my right hand is my dad's. My dad died of alcoholism when I was 12, and he was only 48. Great guy, but he drank too much.
Mhm.
And when I got into all these things, that was my kind of first experience with depression. Like,
Okay.
imagine being a 12-year-old boy, you do your paper route, your father's in the hospital, you think nothing's wrong, and then you come home, and I think I already sent you the book on audio. You come home and his best friend's there, and he tells you your father died. I mean, it's like shocking. And then going to see your father in a casket, and it's kind of funny. I was a kid that was picked on all the time. A close uncle taught me taking karate. It saved my life. So I noticed a pattern. If you train, you feel better. If you practice, you get better. So it's interesting because when I go out and do school talks or talks anywhere, I never planned on being a personal fitness coach, corporate wellness coach, or mental health advocate or anti-bullying specialist. When I went to school for this exercise physiology, it just kind of happened. It happened. So I would say, did we focus on mental health back then? Not specifically, even though there was undertones. Like when my first book came out, it was made into a play, Always Pick Class. And an article was done on me in the local paper for Mr. Connecticut. And I talked about depression in kids because when you look at it, when you look at children, when they get bullied, they become depressed. And I don't know if you heard the stats recently. It's, mental illness is up by 34.1% in the US. 34.1%. Here's the other scary stats. CDC, I think the numbers are off. I think they're higher. CDC released this about 2 months ago that ages 15 to 44, leading cause of death was overdose. Second leading cause of death was suicide. 15 to 44-year-olds.
Wow.
And sixth leading cause of death was liver failure. Can you imagine a 15-year-old liver's failing? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. So when you look at the whole model in a sense of like addiction, okay, what is addiction? People can't get right with themselves, right? That's why they drink. That's why they do drugs. They want to numb off and feel better. And if the worst addiction, the easiest addiction is sugar. You don't need an ID to get sugar. So people compensate by eating. People compensate by that. And that in itself, when you look at addiction, is mental illness too, because you can't shut it off. I mean, how many people? My ex drove in the car with 2 young kids. I mean, who does that? That's not mentally right? It doesn't make sense. So when you look at it, in the sense of as a personal fitness coach, corporate wellness consultant, and self-defense tactics instructor, when you have people do that stuff, you rebuild their confidence. Doesn't matter whether they're 8 or 88. Like I had a young girl start with me a few months ago. This is how bad bullying is in school. The girls will fight, and one of their friends will film it on their phone, and they'll pull hair, and then they send it to their friends. So they get embarrassed. I mean, this new era of this thing that we're all tied to now is very scary because anybody can say anything they want. They can bully anytime they want. And there was a very successful, very affluent town in California. I don't know the name of it, but there was a condition called affluence. This was a very gymnastics-based, like girls gymnastics town. So these 10 and 12-year-old girls and 14-year-old girls, if they didn't make the gymnastics team, they were jumping off the bridge.
Wow.
And they were calling the condition affluence. Look at recently. Was it Naomi Judd? Naomi Judd eventually was depression. They had the woman from the 2019 Miss America 4 months ago jumped off a bridge. In our own state last year, 2021, the mental health officer, law enforcement officer for the entire state of Rhode Island jumped off the Newport Bridge. Matt Beltrami. And it's going up. Donna Scaretti, who started Back the Blue, which is in New York, which was after her first daughter died from a pool accident. Her 2 daughters are in the military. Her daughter's unit, 2 months ago, they had 4 suicides. 4.
Yeah.
So, what's going on here? People say COVID was the pandemic. This is the pandemic, mental illness. It is the pandemic. And I think with military, trying to transition home from going, all right, I'm a combat guy. Now what do I do? How do you kind of get out of that mindset? If you're really seriously active military, I mean, some of those guys, that's tough. And men and women, that's just tough. I just find that whole concept challenging to almost like flip the switch and turn it off. I have close friends that are 3 and 4 time Purple Hearts, and they've got definitely residual effects from it. How can you not?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. No matter what kind of combat situation you're in or even other traumatic experiences that may happen during your time of service.
Well,
Absolutely.
exactly. I appreciate that. I'm a movie buff, and there was a great movie with Brad Pitt called Fury. And I don't know if you've ever seen it, but he's a tank commander. He's had the same crew, and he's got scars. He's tough as nails, and he has that bravado and the whole bit. And his second gunner gets shot, and they get a little cleaning up the mess. And they put a new guy in there who's like a pencil pusher. Guy has no clue, and they kind of rough on this guy. So now Brad Pitt says, he's from like Jersey, tough as nails. He's like, because I was killing Nazis in Africa, now I'm killing Nazis in Germany. That's been going on for 2 or 3 years. He says, okay, guys, I'm going to get my orders. And he goes out behind the barracks alone, and he takes a knee, and he starts to cry for about 30 seconds. That one scene says it all, and the tough part, I think, no offense to females or males, is that, the whole idea of, well, men are supposed to be tougher, men aren't supposed to be vulnerable. And I tell all my clients, anybody I consult with her, when I go and speak, I go, vulnerability is strength. What was the Courage Under Fire with Meg Ryan? There's a scene where she breaks down. It's a true story. She breaks down, and one of the soldiers is like, "What are you doing crying?" She goes, "It's just stress. How can you not be stressed? How can you not be stressed in a combat environment? The things they see."
Sure, absolutely. Now, could you go into a little more detail about your 3 pillars and how they specifically apply to those transitioning from the military?
So you think about it, like they're usually keeping active. They're doing PT the whole bit, and then they go to to go back to civilian life. So when you look at exercise, okay, let's just take the exercise model. We know for a fact it raises your endorphins. We know that. We know that completely. What do endorphins do? They sweep out the bad hormones. Now, when you think about bad hormones, now you've got adrenaline and epinephrine and non-epinephrine, adrenaline and non-adrenaline. Now, what people don't realize about adrenaline, the fight or flight mechanism, is that hormone, normal hormones, regular, all the hormones in your body normally have receptor sites. They have to be able to attach to something else. Adrenaline doesn't. It can freely go in and out of any cell at once. So how do you go from a combat situation to that? And one of the best ways to do it that we found is high intensity training, and then the whole martial arts where we're hitting focus pads, because I'm a Muay Thai guy from Sityodtong, Martial Karate School, and SPG East. Hitting focus mitts, getting out that aggression. Like I have a lot of people coming out of recovery from addiction, and you show them focus mitts, and they hit them like, oh my God, and they get almost like addicted to it. So that point of that is you can get that adrenaline rush and that endorphin rush. Plus, let's face facts, as a species, we're kind of violent. We can't help it. So hitting stuff is fun, and it's de-stressing. So that is a big thing, the high intensity training. And I always tell clients, find what works. Like me, my whole thing is martial arts, high intensity training, and believe it or not, yoga. Believe it or not, yoga. And yoga to me is one of the best forms of all 3 work for me as far as, and I tell people all the time, I go, look, if you like spinning, go spinning. If you like swimming, go swimming. Whatever's going to raise your endorphins and raise your confidence level. And so that's that pillar. So that definitely, we know for a fact that helps. Excuse me. And we've proven it gets rid of adrenaline the whole bit. And when you look at adrenaline, what does adrenaline do? It artificially raises your heart rate. I mean, they've done studies on these stupid phones when like an alert goes off. There's a little, they've actually put people on EKGs that your heart rate will bump up. So you're causing more stress, and when you think about it, do we really have to have a fight or flight mechanism, you or I? No, but if the military, they don't know what's coming around the corner. Now how do you shut that off? Like me, I go into a restaurant with a girlfriend, and I'm like, I automatically have situational awareness, facing the door, the whole bit. Military is on a whole nother level. Anytime I'm dealing with the law enforcement, the same things. Now, if you take the nutrition piece, we're going to the nutrition piece. Okay. When you really think about it, you are what you eat, right? You eat garbage in, garbage out. It's like a computer. If I'm eating donuts, guess what's going to happen? You're going to get that artificial high from the sugar, and then that drop. And then what else happens? Oh, now my pants are tight. Now I look like hell. Now I feel, and it makes you drained and sluggish versus eating healthy, eating a better diet, more specific for you. The difference is, it's what we always say, it's the 2 C's, commitment and consistency. And it's on one of my certification tests. I go, what's more important? Well, commitment. Well, if you're not consistent, you can't be committed. Well, then it's consistency. Well, if you're not consistent, you can't be committed. You have to have both. So you have to have that commitment to be consistent with everything. As Joe Rogan would say, as motivation drops, which it will, fight up, motivated Monday, discipline takes over. So can you be disciplined to not eat that, to not do that? I mean, it's almost like dealing with an addiction. How do you break the addiction cycle? By being disciplined, saying, I'm not going to pick that up. Now, to get to the last level, mindset programming. Okay, that's very important. I think the stats are, I think Dr. Wayne Dyer said this, that we have, or it's been documented, we have 60,000 separate thoughts a day. The problem is we have the same 60,000 separate thoughts a day, and we're all, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm going to be, I'm pretty blunt about who I am. I mean, my books are out there. I'm completely exposed and transparent. We're our own worst enemies, right? We are. We're our own worst enemies. I got fat. Forget when I put out my MMA conditioning DVDs and I had to edit them, I'm like, oh my God, why did I say that? Look at that angle there. Oh my stomach's, I'm the worst. And we have to get to a place after going through trying to commit suicide myself twice in 2019, 12/22/19, that scar on my neck is real, try to slit my own throat. And then 12/23/19, I literally tried to jump off the Tobin Bridge like I was looking for a parking space. And a state trooper sent me. Now, when you look at that, what is that all about, the programming? Why I got overwhelmed the whole bit? How do you get out of that mindset? Well, you got to surround yourself with positivity, and you have to start thinking more positive. One of the biggest things I say to everybody, it's a chapter in my book, and this is a quote from, I believe, Mark Twain. And this is kind of deep. I know this is deep. Forgiveness is the fragrance that is shed by the violet on the heel that has crushed it. So forgiveness is the fragrance that is shed by the violet on the heel that has crushed it. Who's the first person you got to forgive? Yourself. Guilt, regret, and shame will cripple anybody. When people say, well, when you look at mental illness, we call it, it's in another chapter of the book called The Hidden Wound. If you have a cast on your arm, hey, Michelle, what happened to your arm? You say you're anxious or, you get suicidal ideation, people are like, whoa. You say you have cancer, people show up with food at your house. So it's a big challenge to get rid of the stigma. Matter of fact, I'm involved with McLean Hospital in Belmont because they started a program 5 years ago called Deconstructing the Stigma. They literally interviewed me, and the whole point behind this book is to get it out there, do TEDx's, and get people talking about it. So I think mindset is just getting into that mode. Like I've got 7 tattoos, and they all mean something like, my girls call me Batman. So why do I love Batman? He has no superpowers. He gets knocked down, he just gets back up. This one on my chest is tied for be relentless, sumbach, sumbom. And I think when it comes to your recovery, you have to be relentless. You have to be relentless. Like I tried pills, I tried it all. And then when I went to McLean Hospital and I was in a lockdown ward, I found out about ECT therapy, electroconvulsive therapy. Now it's got about a 97% success rate, 12 treatments. Then you start tapering. I started feeling better after 3. 3.
Okay.
And when I mentioned it to people like doctors that knew me, like, oh, you shouldn't have done that. Yeah, that's because Hollywood demonized it with the movie One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest when they showed it without anesthesia. It's been out since 1938. So to me, there's plenty of other options out there. There's the carnivore diet that people talk about that will help you with that. Then there's actually going to people like Dr. Mark McCullough, who's a naturopath, to really analyze why are you having this problem. You have to have the 3 pillars: exercise, nutrition, mindset, programming. What you garbage in, garbage out.
Sure. Now, can you use the 3 pillars before you transition out to kind of pave the way a little bit?
I would think so. Yeah. I mean, keep up your exercise level when you're there. Follow your nutrition, right? And then mindset. They've done studies that kids that are playing violent. This was a Dr. Wayne Dyer concept. You got to be really careful what you're listening to, what you're reading, what you're watching TV. Look at the news. Is the news ever good? No, right? I don't think so. 80% of it's garbage and it's all bad. Like look at the stats. They give us all these stats on how many people died. I'm like, how'd you get those stats so fast? That doesn't make any sense. So I mean, you got to be careful and weed out the disinformation. So I think reading and programming your mind while you're out there, and then watching nutrition. If you're eating garbage, you're going to be garbage. If there's a way when you're in the military to kind of be able to focus on that, that's great. I mean, one of the biggest ways you can focus on it is the exercise piece. Exercise and the mindset. Maybe not the food, because their food is their food.
What are some examples of people who have used these 3 pillars to really overcome their mental illness? Do you have any?
You mean as far as testimonials?
Just kind of people with whom you've worked, just examples of how they're kind of using that process to help them.
A friend of mine, Rich O'Connor. Rich O'Connor is a 3 or 4-time Purple Heart veteran. We've been friends for years and trained regularly. And, he almost lost his life to a roadside bomb. And he's an MMA guy. He always says, Tim Kennedy, who's a professional fighter and a ranger, Richie lost. He got 2nd place in the all Army combative. So Richie's a big fan of working out all the time and then, cleaning up his diet, watching the alcohol and everything else. He's a huge fan of that. Other people that we've seen too, with the National Guard and the military, in the law enforcement. I mean, with the law enforcement, especially just locally, we've done a lot of work with them that alleviate the pressure. I mean, they've got 1 step below the military because the military is on the front line. I wouldn't even say 1 step below, but they're almost on the same line. And you start hearing these police officers saying, "Oh yeah, you see that accident last week with the motorcycle? The guy's head came off." I'm like, how can you just walk home and so, you know what I mean? Like just write that off. So I think it's important to vent that stress. That's what we found that has worked. Like, we have a Facebook page after Matt Beltrami died. That's basically a nonprofit. Reach out, reset, recharge. So being able to reach out to people and then reset and recharge any way you can. So I think those are some of the examples that have worked, because when we put that page up, I think we've got 1,000 followers now, and people are always looking for information. So I'm always putting out something like, our big thing now is we have what's called an MHMMM. That's on my Facebook page now, and at Burma Kearns and Kevin Kearns, and it's 2 minutes of exercise, nutrition. We show that it's only a 5-minute video, and then mindset program to give you a word of the day. And so I usually tell people, go focus on one word. Like you'll see Rocky here, and getting Ali. There's everything motivational around here.
Mm-hmm.
So think like that. And there's people that do that. There's people that literally we consult with, say, do this, do this, do this. Here's your program. Here's your plan. And then keep consistent results and track yourself. How are you feeling? What's feeling good? What's feeling bad? What's not working? What's working? I think that's the most important thing. So people like Richie O'Connor, Luke Bonin have gone through stuff like that, and some of my own law enforcement friends too. Mark Marcy, 23-year Hoboken detective. I mean, I know this is more military, but law enforcement, think about it. A lot of the law enforcement people, firefighters including, first responders, have come out from the military, and that's where they go. Because it's almost like they gravitate right to that job.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that answers the question.
It does. Sure. Absolutely. And just so now with your pillars, how do you feel that your pillars have helped you in terms of just kind of resetting everything with regard to your own experiences?
That's a very good question. I think the consistency level, like the biggest mistake I made when I was 14 and I started going to martial arts, I realized very young that if you ask for help, it's okay to ask for help. And then I kind of forgot when I started getting sick, and I kept it to myself. Like there's friends of mine that read this book, and they're like, I was there that day when this happened to you, and I didn't know, and this, that, and the other thing. So I think it's helped me open my eyes to say, okay, what's my mindset here? What's my mindset? Like when I finished my ECT therapy and they wanted me to stay on a low dose of antidepressant, I pushed it back. And my therapist was like, he's like, well, you're in, they pull the lab, not the lab coat, but they have to protect their butts. Well, you're in remission. I'm like, no, I choose to be cured.
Mm-hmm.
Choose. I mean, they've done studies with people that have had cancer. There was multiple studies in Patch Adams, the movie with Robin Williams, where the Gesundheit Institute, where they found laughter and all this other stuff works. I mean, they know for a fact laughter changes the catecholamines in your body and makes you feel better. So why not? I'm like, if you can catch yourself going through that, I think for me, what I do is I can almost catch myself in an anxious moment or feeling overwhelmed. And the thing that I remember all the time going through being at McLean Hospital, what I've done too is I've said this: somebody always has it worst. Somebody. Mm-hmm. And then taking a Taoist principle, from Lao Tzu, if you're in the valley, you should be celebrating because the hill's coming. There's only one way. And if you're at the top of the hill, you can't celebrate forever because the valley's coming. I mean, that is life. One of my famous quotes for everybody else is, life's an ocean. You're in your little boat, and it's nice and calm. And 5 seconds later, you get trashed, and you get drowning and you're bailing out. And that's just life. That's why the book, there's light in the tunnel, not at the end. Because when you look at people going through all that stuff, especially suicidal ideation, which feels like a cement overcoat, you don't want to hear, what's it? Tomorrow will be okay. No, you want to over now. And I think one of the best ways for me, especially for anybody, but what I've consulted people is short exercise, go for a walk, call a friend, any of those, have a list of what you can do, breathing, deep breathing, settle down. And then my new book, which is coming out in a few months, called Check the Facts. It's the illusion of control. We think we're in our cars and we have control. Do we really have control? Do you have control of your tires? No. Do you have control of your engine? No. Do you have control of these idiot drivers that are on their phone? No. And how much did it really take to get a license nowadays? It's a joke. And we have all these distractions now. People used to worry about the radio. Now you got to worry about this. I mean, you see truck drivers on their phones with 18-wheelers. It's like, are you kidding? That'll take out an entire population. So I think that whole flexibility with being able to go, stop for a minute, hit the brakes, tap, take the 50,000-foot view if you can, And my tattoos all mean something. So they remind us, I'm like, okay, like this is consistency, unwavering belief in a disciplined code of conduct. Just to remember, I'm like, what's my discipline here? What's my discipline here? What's my discipline here? And that takes some thought process. That takes some reflection. I always advocate people to, like, one thing I learned out of Al-Anon, which is the other side of alcoholism, to get out a thank you journal, gratitude journal. Just write down 5 things you're grateful for. And I like David Goggins has this. He'll go through something difficult. He'll write it on a piece of paper and then put it in the cookie jar. When he's going through something else that's tough, he'll take out one of those pieces and go, yeah, I got through that. I can get through this. So it's an interesting
Right.
way to kind of think about that. And the other big thing is I love one of those quotes, yesterday's history, tomorrow's a mystery, and today's a gift. That's why they call it the present.
What are some takeaways, some words of wisdom as people try to get started with the 3 pillars or with some other thing to really overcome and work through that mental illness?
I appreciate that. Number one, be patient. Be patient. At the same time, be consistent. Myself, I get up every morning and do Wim Hof breathing, the diaphragmatic breathing. They've proven it kills the bad cells and it sets the standard. Okay. The next thing I do 22 to 30 pull-ups for the veterans that have died every day. That's my people are doing push-ups. I do pull-ups. It's a lot harder. 3, stay consistent with your nutrition. Just try to stay as consistent. If you can do 80 to 90% of staying on point, you're ahead of the game. You're ahead of the game. And I think the other takeaway is, you know what? Progress, not perfection. We are all in progress. We're all in progress. I mean, Matthew McConaughey has a great saying. Life. I love that Texas straw. Life was never made to be easy. Whoever told you they lied. It's complicated, right? It is. And I think the other big one I take away from yoga is this: get comfortable being uncomfortable. Now they're going from military to home. They're going to almost reset everything, and give yourself time. There's a great saying from a great yoga mentor: not hindsight, because hindsight's judgment. Kindsight, because how do you know what it is until you went through it? Give yourself a break. At the same time, give yourself a break. Hold yourself accountable to a regimen. The most successful people have a routine. Routine. Routine.
Sure.
As far as your own programming.
Okay. Fantastic. I love that.
Was that too many points? I hope. I don't know.
No, that's fine. That's great. That's fantastic. I just love your just focus on the, sort of like the Nike just do it type thing. So
Well,
really,
see, the problem with Nike is Nike left the word out. They said just do it. My thing is just do it now. Just do it now. Just do it now. Like I love Jocko. Jocko, he has so many pictures of his watch. 4:30 he gets up. 4:30 he gets up. 4:30 he gets up to work out. He goes in and he said it's just mindset. And the other thing I like about it, I was listening to him this morning, is being able to take a step back from a situation. So there's a book called Buddha's Brain, and Buddha's Brain is all about this, what's called first dart, second dot theory. So first dot is when something happens to you, an insult. Second dot is, this is where language gets funny. Second dot is your response versus your reaction. If you can hit pause, it's not what happens to you, it's your interpretation what happens to you. Like, somebody I was dating for a while, they were renting a house, and all of a sudden the landlord turned around, they're going to sell the house. I'm losing my home. I'm like, you're not losing your home. You've got 6 weeks. I go, plus Massachusetts, you can drag it out. No, forget it. Do you want to be a victim or do you want to be a victor? Which do you want to be?
sure.
You want to suck your thumb and go in your room and have a pity party, or you want to get to work? And one thing I'll tell everybody that's transitioning out there too, this is a big thing that I always tell people. I'm like, you know what? Everybody has one gift, at least one gift. Don't keep it wrapped. You matter, and you're not alone.
Nice. Fantastic. Well, Kevin, how can people get in contact with you?
Burnwithkearns.com or Kevin@burnwithkearns.com. And I'm so old school. I'm gonna do this, which people aren't gonna believe. 508-404-8503. I pick up my phone. That's what Alexander Graham Bell invented them for.
All right, fantastic. We'll include all of those things in the show notes. Kevin, you're amazing. I really appreciate your focus and just really getting down to business when it comes to your health.
Well,
Thank you so much.
No, thank you, Michelle. I appreciate your opportunity and flexibility. I go, this is all about helping everybody else. I think the biggest problem with mental illness and illness in general, but especially mental illness, people think they're alone. They think they don't matter. That's the challenge. You matter. You're not alone. And if you're going through that, find help. Reach out to a friend. Reach out to a colleague. Talk to somebody. Just talk to somebody. I don't care if it's a priest, it doesn't matter. Somebody that will get your mind straight and say, you know what, let's get you into here. Let's get you into there. But people have such a tendency to back off. I'm like, you can't back off. You go forward.